Well, if this isn't just the most perfect way to start an episode, I don't know what is. The Gospel of Matthew tells us, "And he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, 'Drink this, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out of many for the forgiveness of sins.'" Now, assuming that we take this passage literally, where is the cup that Jesus used? Is it perhaps this red chalice in Valencia Cathedral? Or maybe this dish of green glass in Genoa Cathedral? Ooh, how about this golden gilded chalice in Leon? Or this silver object in New York's Metropolitan Museum? Or perhaps, in the finest Indiana Jones fashion, this simple wooden bowl in Wales? Well, today we are gonna find out. So join us as we dive into the convoluted history of the Holy Grail, look at all of the candidates, and evaluate them in everybody's favorite cup-based medieval relic game show, Grail or Fail! Oh man, this is gonna go straight to syndication. Speaking of hilarious game shows, however, this episode is brought to you by today's sponsor, Abolish Everything, which I was just on. But you know what? One great game show at a time. Let's go. The Holy Grail. Everybody knows about it. Kinda. Is it a simple cup of a carpenter, perhaps? Or the object of a questing knight? Or this cup, floating in the sky above the Garden of Gethsemane? Or a castle beacon for a convent of nuns who really want to be punished? Or even this glass architectural element at the Louvre, which a certain bestseller says is apparently over the grave of Mary Magdalene in a plot by a Chinese-American architect to hint that she had Jesus's kids. Though, side note, that book does fail to mention that a cathedral in France actually does claim to have Mary Magdalene's skull in this reliquary, which is way more metal and interesting. Seriously, if the book ended on this golden nightmare fuel, it would have been way cooler. It's like if an Elden Ring boss had a baby with Returnal, but I digress. Back to the question at hand, which one of these has the best claim to being the real Grail? Well, that is a surprisingly complicated question. But looking at all of the candidates can teach us a lot about the history of Christian relics, the evolution of culture, and how legends and reality feed off each other. First off, though, we do have to deal with one big semantical myth. None of these are the Holy Grail. That is because Grail isn't really a term the Catholic Church uses for relics. Every one of these existing relics are officially referred to as the, quote, Holy Chalice. Later on in this episode, we will circle back to how the word Grail came about, but it does say a lot about the power of storytelling that everyone knows this object as the Holy Grail, even though the claimed real objects aren't referred to that way. The first historical mention of the chalice actually comes from the Bible, with the book of Matthew talking about how Jesus blessed bread and wine at the Last Supper and shared the cup with his disciples in the first sacrament of communion. And that's kinda it. The cup isn't described as having any special powers or significance. In fact, it says a lot that we've built a huge storytelling tradition around the Holy Grail, but none of the other dinnerware. I mean, where's the love for the Holy Plate, am I right? Why didn't any Arthurian knights go questing for a sacred wine decanter or blessed tablecloth? Well, actually, come to think of it, they kind of did. Granted, the quester wasn't a knight of the Round Table. Rather, it was the Queen Mother of the Byzantine Empire. Saint Helena, mother of the Emperor Constantine and devoted Christian, went to Jerusalem around the years 326 through 328 CE when she was in her late 70s. While this trip was probably largely political, she also collected stories about where various Bible events occurred, founded or renovated churches on those sites, and supposedly acquired a large number of relics. These supposedly included the true cross, the nails and rope from the crucifixion, and the holy tunic. Now, granted, it is kind of easy to clown on Helena, because after all, it is entirely possible that the people in Palestine heard a rich Roman woman was wandering around offering good money for rusty nails. So yeah, probably some of what she acquired were fakes. But let's look at it another way. By asking where historical events during Jesus' life took place, even 3 centuries after his execution, she was doing much of the same as early historians like Herodotus. Because that was just sort of the best many historians could do back then, to ask local people for stories passed down about locations. And since some records indicate she ordered excavations of sites, supposedly that is how she found the true cross, some historians have dubbed her a pioneer of archaeology. Actually, come to think of it, St. Helena probably deserves her own episode sometime in the future, so we write that down. I know the list is getting long, we're gonna get to it. But here's something that she wasn't said to have found: the cup from the Last Supper. However, someone must have found the chalice, or at least a cup claimed to be the chalice, since in the 7th century, an Italian pilgrim wrote about making a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. And among the objects he claimed to see was an onyx cup venerated as the one Jesus used in the First Communion. But it is important to note that at this time, no one really cared all that much about the Holy Chalice. During the Middle Ages, the Big Daddy relic was the true cross. In fact, pieces of the true cross were so popular as relics that it's long been joked that if you put all of the pieces together, it would build a whole forest. Which is to say, since the trade in relics during the Middle Ages was such a booming industry, if the Holy Chalice was in fact a big deal, there would have been a lot of them associated with stories of miracles and healing, and there just wasn't. Some records do suggest there was a chalice venerated at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, but it ranked as a relic roughly equal to the sponge Jesus was said to have been offered a drink from. But then, everything changed. And by everything, we mean culture. You see, in much of the Middle Ages, stories were told through art. Most people were illiterate, and that meant that mural paintings, stained glass, statues, and oral folktales could be as influential as sermons and books when it came to shaping religious traditions and stories. And many artistic depictions of Jesus praying in the Garden of Gethsemane pictured a literal cup and communion wafer or surrounded by holy light. Now that cup was metaphorical, referring to Jesus begging God to let this cup be taken away from me. In other words, please don't make me have to die for humanity's sins. It's been suggested that these pictures of cups may have been misinterpreted in folk traditions, but a rival hypothesis suggests that pre-existing tales of magical cauldrons in Celtic mythology either fused with accounts of a holy chalice or otherwise influenced where the tale would go next. And look, if that all sounds like a fancy way of saying, we don't really know, yeah, we don't really know, and probably never will. But what everyone agrees on is that the patient zero for Grail legends is Chrétien de Troyes, a 12th century troubadour from what is now northern France. Chrétien largely wrote Arthurian stories, and one of his most notable achievements was writing one of the earliest stories with Lancelot as its main character. Though it was his last verse poem, Percival, the Story of the Grail, which would be his most popular. In it, the questing knight Percival meets the Fisher King, a wounded monarch who cannot walk far or ride. That night, Percival watches a mysterious procession of objects, ending with a beautiful maiden carrying a grail, Old French for a dish or bowl, containing a single communion wafer. Percival stays silent, but wakes the next morning being told that if he had asked the right question, it would have healed the king and his court. This story was a sensation, despite the fact that Chrétien died before completing it. In fact, that kinda made it more popular, because later troubadours could essentially fanfiction their own ending. And oh boy, fanfic they did. The next several decades saw 4 major continuations of the story, plus 2 prologues and a sequel. But it was the work of Robert de Boron, whose stories were inspired by Percival, but not a direct continuation, that the Holy Grail really entered the lexicon. While in the original story, the significance of the Grail is ambiguous, de Boron wrote a complicated backstory, where Joseph of Arimathea, the rich man who donated a tomb to bury Jesus, used the cup from the Last Supper to collect Christ's blood after the crucifixion. In it, the Grail demonstrates mystic powers and is brought to Europe in the company of a line of Grail keepers, and then it was off to the races. There were stories about Percival questing for the Grail, but also Galahad, Lancelot, and other assorted knights. These stories all became massively popular and, surprise, surprise, suddenly relics of the Holy Chalice, previously an also-ran relic, mind you, were popping up all over Europe. And they continued doing so for centuries, even into the modern era. Though there are only a few that are considered true candidates today, which is just a great pivot to talk more about our contestants in history's favorite cup-based medieval relic game show, Grail or Fail. Okay, all right. First up, we have the Valencia Chalice. Ooh, very nice, Valencia. Let's take a look at your qualifications here. It says in your bio that your base and handle are a later make with Arabic inscriptions, all right? But your red agate bowl dates back from around the 1st century CE or perhaps 2 centuries before. Looks like there's also vellum records tracking you at least back to the 12th century, okay. And would you look at that, apparently not 1, but 2 popes have celebrated mass with you and referred to you as genuine. Okay, we have a strong opening contender. Except, hold on 1 second, I'm sorry. I just had this thought that, like, if someone was furnishing an upper room for a dinner, are they really gonna provide a red agate cup? Like, I feel like in a world where people sort of steal hotel towels and stuff, that might be a risk. I mean, I guess if you are literally giving it to Jesus, it would be cool, but look, I'm not trying to yuck your yum. Strong start out the gate. Next up, we have the Nantios Cup, which, oh man, to quote my favorite Chicago-based antiquities expert, that is the cup of a carpenter. But it says here you're actually from Wales. Okay, and you do have some miracles attributed to you, but originally you said you were to be made of the true cross. So, like, which is it? Were you part of the Last Supper or the crucifixion? You don't know. Well, okay, you know what? I love the confidence anyway. The Nantios Cup, everybody! Going down the line, next up is another Italian candidate, the Genoa Chalice. Ooh, very nice. Say, are you emerald? Oh no, it says here Egyptian glass. And it seems that not until the late 13th century that anyone identified you as the Grail. That's not a big deal. I mean, before that, your miracles were just said to have happened because emeralds are magic, even though that's not what you're made from. Oh, but you were seized by Napoleon, so that is very cool. All right, everybody put your hands together for this beautiful chalice, easily the most dazzling. Up next is a hometown hero, right in my own backyard at New York's Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Antioch Chalice, hailed as the Holy Chalice after its archaeological discovery in 1910. And that's it. Huh. Oh, wait, no, there is one note here. Experts also all agree that you are in fact a lamp. No, not the holy lamp, just like an oil lamp. But you know what? What a lamp you are. Give it up for the Antioch Chalice lamp! The Antioch lamp! Seriously, how did this one get on the show? Get me a producer on the line right now because this is becoming ridiculous. And last but not least, we have the Chalice of Donna Urraca. Wow, look at the finery. Feels like if a Nazi drank from you, his skin would just shrivel right off his face. But that, I guess, is what happened with the false grail, right? I don't know. It says here you weren't considered a candidate until a 2014 book claimed it, an idea that a professor at Oxford labeled, I quote here, idiotic. But hey, a lot of people came to see you as a result, and you even got modeled into VR, so that is truly something. So there you have them, ladies and gentlemen. Big hand for all of our contestants, please. But sadly, you can't all be the holiest of holy liquid vessels. So we have to ask all of you in the comments section, Grail or fail? Now, due to my ability to peer into the future, I have the results right here in this envelope, so let's just see here. You all fail. None of you are the Holy Grail, because again, remember, it does not exist. It is a literary invention. But as for who the real Holy Chalice is, drumroll please. You all are. No, seriously, this is not a participation trophy kind of thing. Because, to be honest, the historicity of each of you is not that important. Even the Vatican has stated, when it comes to relics, the belief in them and the devotion shown to them is the spiritually important part. Even if what you are praying over is not really a piece of the true cross, it's a representation of the true cross and holds the same spiritual weight. In fact, that's often how Buddhist relics work as well. There's just not the same scramble to authenticate them, because outside of stories, that's not really the important part. What is valuable is their tool as a focus for faith. Even if the relic is false, the feelings, the devotion, the good works and spiritual depth they inspire is true. And in looking at this, what I want you all to think about isn't which of these are true or false, but rather how culture, art, belief, and yes, even sweet action-adventure movies have changed and shaped our perception of these objects and what they mean. Seriously, you may have never thought about the Holy Chalice until 10 minutes ago, but I would wager a large sum of money that the idea of the Holy Grail has been bouncing around your mind for ages like it has mine. But the Holy Grail was never real. It's an invention of the Middle Ages, yet it has impacted all of us. So truly, out of our lineup, which is the Holy Grail? Take your pick. Just not you, Antioch. You're still a lamp. Oh God, I have to go fire someone. Oh, extra historians, it is a good thing that I am diversifying my game show work these days. Everyone, I am so beyond excited to tell you that my episode of Abolish Everything, where I compete on stage, will be going live on May 4th, which for those of you keeping score is just one day away from if you watch this episode the day it dropped. Thank you very much for that, by the way. But for everyone else, you can and should go check it out right this very instant because I cannot wait for you to see what I attempted to abolish. Do you want to be freed? Freed from the normifications of intellectual authoritarianism! Then buckle up, buttercups, because tonight we are going to abolish lecterns! I am f***ing sick of this thing! But I, of course, am getting ahead of myself. Abolish Everything is a no-holds-barred comedy debate game show where abolitionists, like myself, get to argue in front of a live NYC audience to erase an annoying thing from existence. Things like loud chewers, historical inaccuracies, the Oxford comma, you get it. But in our way is the political establishment. Boo! A panel of opposing improv comics hell-bent on maintaining the status quo. They actually came at me pretty hard, but I think I held my own.
Can you explain, like, really pretentious TED Talks where all they have is a tiny microphone here and a turtleneck?
The turtleneck is more the lectern of the body.
Jesus Christ!
In the end, the live audience gets to decide what is abolished from society forever and who gets to move on to their Tournament of Champions at the end of the season. That is the chaos of Abolish Everything, and it's only happening over on Nebula. And if I could break from the script that I wrote here for a second, I do want to take a moment to just gush on how much this production, how great it was to work on it. Nebula, I've mentioned this before, but this is a real tangible example. Lets creators like myself stretch muscles and expand beyond what we normally do and just support us on those journeys. I haven't done stand-up in New York City in over 13 years, and it was an absolute delight to be invited on this show and just get to do something that I forgot that I loved so much. And I cannot wait for all of you to see it, and thank you so much to the Wendover crew and Nebula for supporting me in this endeavor. If I'm gonna get back on the ad read portion of this, don't forget that Nebula also has just tons of other originals that you can't see anywhere else. I've talked to you about them before, not to mention tens of thousands of creative, thought-provoking, and just plain fun videos from your favorite creators early and ad-free. That, of course, does include every new episode of Extra History a full week earlier than you can see them anywhere else. So if you want to watch every episode of Abolish Everything, please check out mine, and just tons of other amazing Nebula originals, then please use my link nebula.tv/extrahistory and you'll get 40% off. That's $36 a year, or I think broken down is like $3 a month if I get that right. And when you do, that subscription also helps keep our show going, so thank you very much in advance for that. You can scan the QR code here or click the link below. Again, check me out on Abolish Everything only on Nebula right here, or stay on the YouTube machine and check out our next video here, though that will have lecterns in it, unless I abolished them. If I were to tell you that Ziliad's Architectures, Lotus Wolf, Peter Yim, Kuya Koi, Joseph Blame, Hunter Z, Dominic Valenciana, and Angelo Valenciana were the best legendary patrons, you better believe me.